3, 2, 1, and we're live. Welcome back. This is the Mouse of Madness podcast. Today we're going to be going over the nostalgia podcast of our movie, TV show, and games. I don't know if you guys tuned in last time, but we talked about the top 10 best movies from 2017 and the top 5 worst movies from 2017. And we really haven't found our niche or in direction of what we're doing, but I think we're getting into the more aspect of doing more movies, games, and TV shows is what we're going to review on this podcast. And we're going to jump right into it and get started. So today, for my first pick, I chose The Matrix. And the reason I chose this movie is because it was one of those iconic movies from my childhood where I was really just blown away by this movie. Honestly, it was one of those movies where it got me into technology and why I'm such a big movie buff today. I think it was the first movie I ever went to the theater when I was young and probably saw this movie, I don't know, 2-3 times in a row. And to this day, every time it's on TV or I see it, I always want to watch it. It's one of those movies that brings back good memories from my childhood, and I just love what they did in the movie. I'm sure you guys have seen this movie. I don't know who actually has not seen this movie, but it's one of my favorite movies, and I love Keanu Reeves in the movie. I love the whole theme of the movie. I love the storyline. I actually read the books after I watched the movie because I was so intrigued I wanted to know more about it because it was such one of those movies where I don't know. I had to watch it so many times to actually get the whole gist of everything, so I needed to read the book to get the backstory on it. And I
think it's one of those series where it's like you do have to rewatch all three to appreciate the scope. It's such a big story. Like even just watching the first one, it was big, but like when you bring in like what's the name of that underground society? Starts with the
Zion.
Yeah. Once you bring that into the fold and you realize like all that stuff, there's it's like two different worlds basically colliding.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I mean, the first time I watched the movie, I couldn't even believe that the whole concept was that the movie was about that you're in a computer world. Like it took me to like the second time to actually grasp that, I think, because I didn't even know what they were talking about. Probably because I was so young and I couldn't probably interpret a lot of this stuff. But now, like if you watch it now, even when I had my like friends watch it with me, they couldn't even figure it out. Like I explained it to them after I watched it a couple of times, it kind of sunk in better.
Wait. Is it the Wachowski sisters now? I'm reading Lana and Lily.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
they're no longer the Wachowski brothers.
Yeah, so kind of crazy.
Sister.
Yeah. I don't know how many more movies they've done besides the Matrix, but
they did that Channing Tatum.
Cloud Atlas.
That's right, Cloud Atlas.
They did that. What was that? Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
Was that good?
It was okay. It was the special effects were cool, but the story was kind of meh. They had what's his name, Eddie, the guy from Fantastic Beasts.
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah, they had him in there as the villain. He was kind of like flamboyant villain, but it was all right.
Yeah.
It didn't like blow me away.
Yeah, but yeah, back to what I was talking about was just like the movie itself. It's crazy to think about how we could actually have AI be so intelligent it takes over the world, kind of like the whole Terminator type concept, and to blind us from what actually happened and what's going on with the robots. We made a computer-generated world where people could go back to living in society as normal, but we're really turned into a giant battery to power the computers.
Well, what I honestly liked about it was this could have been a standalone. They didn't need to, like, this is a perfect movie, like, in itself. Like, I do like where they went with the second one. I wasn't the biggest fan of the third one, but, I mean, like, even from 1 to 2 then, then, yeah, when you're open up, like, yeah, there's this whole, because in 1 you're thinking, like, you got a ragtag ship of people and they're, scrapping against, the whole robot, rebellion or, robot army, and then it's like you figure there's more people out. So that was a nice, I'll give credit to 2, and then how they get into a little bit more of the culture of like being in the Matrix and like that club and those, those dudes dressed in white and all that. Yeah. And it was very stylistic, man. Like got to admit, like for that time, it was like released in, was it 99 or 2000?
I think it was 99 it was released.
I don't know, man. It's just the cool look to it, you know? Keanu Reeves looked like a badass, and when he was in The Matrix, everybody looked like a badass when they were in The Matrix.
Yeah, the whole part where Morpheus asked him if you want to take the red or blue pill, like, that part always sticks out in my mind every time I watch that movie because it's such a good thing. Like, give him the decision, he makes the right decision. Where
man, it changed the way I daydream when they have that load-in screen where they're like, "Oh, let's load in like a bunch of guns, or something." I just remember that always stuck with me too. It was just like, "Oh, how cool would that be?" As if you could just like, you're sitting in your like little white room, and then they're like, "Whatever you want," they just can like load up for you.
You just learn how to fly a helicopter instantly.
Right? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the whole premises is just crazy to me, and
great cast.
Yeah, the cast was awesome. I do agree the second and third one weren't as good as the first one. They probably could have left it as a standalone, but I do really like the second one. The third one, I feel like they had to do it to kind of close off the Matrix because of just what happened after the second one.
It just, I don't know. I got a lot of like Christian what do they call it, imagery, I guess, like very, it was very like Christ like almost in a way, like Neo sacrificed himself for everybody else, and it was
like the greater good
nothing
of society.
Wrong with that, but it's just like, it's a pretty used up trope.
I thought it was cool how like he was the one looking for it. He's a computer hacker. He knew he didn't belong in the world. He thought something was off, and it seems like everybody that was part of that the real world somehow came to the conclusion while they're in the computer generated world that they didn't belong there, and this was like something fake, and they didn't believe in like fate and stuff like that, and like they wanted to be in control of their own stuff, and that's why they came to the conclusion that there was something wrong and off, and then those people always got plucked, and they would be put in the real world with like Zion and everything.
It was pretty groundbreaking for the time. I mean, they weren't they the first movie to introduce bullet time?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and then on top of that, dude, like think about how they changed popular culture in the sense of like the red and blue pill like analogy. Like how many times have you heard that in the past 10 years?
And
a lot of times.
The Wachowskis, they're not strangers to that because they did V for Vendetta with the whole anonymous thing,
right?
Dude, that they did?
Yeah.
I didn't know the Wachowskis did V for Vendetta.
I'm pretty sure.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure they did.
I mean, you can talk about that before I wrap this up. The Matrix did a lot of iconic stuff to nowadays. Movies wouldn't even be like the same without this movie because of like the bullet scene you're saying and just the special effects and stuff they did. Like it leaped movies forward tremendously going into the 2000s, and I think that's why so many people kind of like quote like, oh, they're doing something like some Matrix type thing in this movie. It's literally because they're the first one to ever do it. So yeah, it's cool, and that's probably why it was such a big part of my life. Honestly, I don't know if I would have gotten into computers as much as I did into technology if it wasn't for the Matrix. I think that really opened up a path in my life, which is why it's one of my picks for this podcast. So I'm going to wrap that up and going to move on to the next one. So for the next movie, we're going to talk about Goldeneye, and I'll let Brandon take this one over.
Yeah, I picked Goldeneye. I mean, that's classic Bond. Pierce Brosnan was my Bond growing up, so I mean, Goldeneye. I don't know if it was the first Bond movie I've seen or I saw, but I played the game quite a bit, and like having known all the characters from the game and watching the movie, it's like what I loved about the game is it tied directly into the movie. Like it followed the plot perfectly. And it's hard to do that. I guess the movie just lends itself to being a good game because it's hard to create a game out of a movie like that, note for note, when you're following the plot. But they made it work, like the train sequence, all the levels. It just made it work. And then the movie itself, I mean, I like the spy thriller aspect of it. Just Pierce Brosnan, I thought he was great as Bond. Like I said, he was my Bond growing up, so I didn't really know anything other than him. He was Bond to me.
Well, it's funny you say how closely it parallels because it's like I played the game first. Mm-hmm. I remember the year, the Nintendo 64 came out, and I was just a little shithead kid and trying to play the dam level, the first level. Yeah. It was just getting eaten up because it's like I never played like a first-person shooter before. That was the first-person shooter I played, but. So, but then, like, yeah, you start getting into it and you get better. And then, yeah, man. And then I just remember later on going to Blockbuster and being like, they have a movie? And then I was like, because I was such a kid. I was completely new to, like, I didn't know James Bond was a thing. So then you get, so then I watched that movie and I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, this matches the game perfectly. Like,
So
here's the
good.
dam, like, and then like they're going through all the levels, like, and even in the jungle is Xena and
Yeah.
shit. Like, it was just, yeah, man.
I really like the plot too with 006, Sean Bean.
Yeah,
is
Sean Bean.
Trevelyan.
Yeah, it's
That was
Trevelyan.
cool because like I thought they did that really well because you think he's dead and then he comes back and he betrays him and
Yeah.
I just thought the movie was perfect. Like even out of all the Bond movies I've seen since then, I love the new Bonds, but I'd still probably watch Goldeneye over any of the new ones. Casino Royale's up there, but
I agree.
But it's like you said, it's like, yeah, Pierce Brosnan. That's my James Bond as well.
That's-
Just
it's-
for the time
he's
period,
same
Tomorrow
thing.
Never Dies. Like, world had enough. I know that wasn't like the best movie in the world, but I still loved it.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I'm the same way. I played the game first. It was my first person shooter. It was the first one I played with all my friends. I was like, I love this game.
Yeah,
And
the
then-
multiplayer.
Yeah, the
on game.
multiplayer. I mean, literally, it's an iconic game. I mean, literally, I think put FPS games on the map for any type of first person shooter game. But yeah, I remember too. I remember going to Blockbuster with I think my mom or my dad, and they got me the movie. I watched it at my house. I literally did follow the game like step by step, and I just remember like scenes in my head that stuck out, like the beginning where like Bond gets like knocked out with Natalia, and they're tied up in like the helicopter, and they escape it, and then they get captured again, and then yeah, I mean, I just remember that movie being
dude, the plot was great.
Yeah, the plot was
With the-
amazing.
The actual Goldeneye, the weapon, as far like the satellite laser,
yeah, the satellite
weapon.
laser.
But it just the set pieces, man. The cradle at the end, like the
Dude.
Yeah.
I remember another part. I remember I think it was Boris who has he steals Bond's pen. And he actually uses it and actually, goes out in his favor or whatever, and because it blows up. And
what's the guy's name who plays Boris? He's like a Broadway actor.
Oh, is it Alan Cummings?
yeah, Al Cummings. Yeah,
He was great as Boris.
yeah,
I'm invincible.
He was.
yeah. That was a great movie. And the same thing with me. When I think about Goldeneye, I don't think as Sean Connery or the other ones as James Bond. I think as Pierce Brosnan, just because of the game, the movie. Honestly, even the next one with Tomorrow Never Dies, I think was that what it's called. I even liked that one. Even Casino Royale, I liked a lot. I mean, after that, I was kind of upset that they kind of moved away from Pierce Brosnan being what's it called, James Bond. But
Famke Janssen,
yeah,
Xenia.
yeah. The coolest thing about GoldenEye I always liked too, and James Bond was. Or not just GoldenEye, just James Bond in general, was he always got the hot girl and got the banger, and then he'd go back to his mission. So I was like, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
he always got the girl.
Yeah. So I guess that's one of the reasons why they always had some iconic movie star play this role. So, but overall,
Well, hold on. I'll just say, for The World Is Not Enough, they had Denise Richards, and her character name was Christmas Jones. That's all I have to add
Which
on
one
to
had
that.
Rosamund Pike in it? Was that World Is Not Enough too?
Was she in?
Pretty sure she was like where they go to the ice. It's like an ice castle.
yeah, Ice Castle. I remember that one. That one's good. I thought that was Tomorrow Never Dies. Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think, yeah. All I remember from
I know-
Tomorrow Never Dies is him shooting people while skiing down a mountain.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah, was it 97?
I thought it
came
was
out.
World Is Not Enough.
It looks like.
Just look up Rosamund Pike.
Yeah, we'll look up Rosamund Pike real quick. That's not how I spell her name.
It's Samund, I believe. AM.
There, just start it, and it
you
smart
go.
keys.
Yeah. So, yeah. It looks like, looking through this part,
Scroll down.
yep. Man, she's been in a lot of
Die
stuff.
Another Day. That's
Die Another
Die
Day.
Another
That's
Day. I
right.
forgot
talked
about that
Me
one.
too. Oh, it's with Halle Berry. That's right. That's the one with the ice stuff, and she's a spy as well.
Yeah.
That's when Halle Berry was getting really big in the time.
And didn't that movie really suck?
I didn't.
I think so.
It sucked, but I think it's one of those movies I liked when I was a kid.
I'm
But
trying
then
to remember the villain.
Gustav. Yeah.
Who's the actor?
Toby Stephens. Yeah, it's him. I remember he's the rich guy that's going around. He's got that cool car that goes like 1,000 miles per hour or something in the ice and stuff, and that blows up and then or whatever. And
Looks like a wannabe Mads.
Yeah.
but yeah, this movie is one of those iconic movies, and I think it's more iconic to us because we grew up with Goldeneye at 64, and I think it's one of those ones where it sticks in our mind really well because of just.
Yeah, I can't. I probably did play it before I saw the movie. Maybe that's why I liked the movie so much. Was like seeing the game play out in front of me as a movie.
Yeah, it's funny because when you think of 64, it's one of the first games you think of. You think of Goldeneye.
Mm-hmm.
At least I do. I don't know about anybody else that's probably played 64.
Yeah,
Goldeneye and Super Mario 64.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anyone who got a 64 on launch, definitely.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna wrap up this topic of Goldeneye, and we're gonna move on to Sam's pick, which is Lord of the Rings. And I'll let Sam. You can start this off and talk about this one.
Well, thank you. So I kind of cheated. I know we were going for one movie, and I know Lord of the Rings is a trilogy, but look. So I just remember story time. So I just remember being in 8th grade when this movie was coming out. And I remember my French teacher like nerding out about it because she was just a nerd about Lord of the Rings, and it's a very storied as far as fantasy goes. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien, is like one of like the creators of like a lot of fantasy elements, and so I get it. It's a huge like classic fan following, and so she's wigging out, and it's like. So then, it's like she's hyping it up. I'm like, okay, it's going to be a cool-ass, fantasy movie. And then it's like, you go see Fellowship, and it's like 2 hours of walking. And it's like, yeah, they get in that little scrap at the top of that one mountain with the ring race. But it's like, other than that, it's like boring as shit. And I was just like, well, what the fuck? Why was this so hyped? But then it's like, but I ended up reading the books. And then you get into part 2, Two Towers, and then it's just like, no. And then you get this great battle with all these crazy, like, orcs at Isengard where they're like, backs against the wall. This whole people, like, Rohan's, like, backup plan is, like, Isengard. And then just in the 3, you got that big battle. And it was just like, okay. It was like, I get the hype now. And I mean, yeah, you want to talk about classics? It's goddamn Lord of the Rings, It's like, and I'm just such a fantasy nerd in a sense of like, if it comes down to like medieval versus space fantasy, it's like I'll take medieval any day of the week. I love space fantasy, I love Alien and all that shit, but yeah, I've always been a medieval fantasy lover at heart, and so. This is a big part of why it was just, and just the adventure genre. Man, I just love a good adventure movie. And it's like, I hate that there's not more of them out. Like, it's just like, because it's like, I'll watch a new Pirates of the Caribbean movie, even though they're shit, just because it's like an adventure. It's like, it's like, I don't know. So,
yeah. I remember growing up and when the movie came out, I was like, oh man, this movie kind of looks like a little too geeked for me because I wasn't as geeked as I am now back then. And when I watched the movie, the first one, I was blown away. Like you said, I was like, man, this movie is really good. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Elijah Wood, but I think he still played the character really well and stuff like that. And I think the whole storyline was really good. But yeah, when you get to the second one, I was like, man, I literally felt like I just watched a 3-hour movie of walking. But overall, the big premises of the movie, because I never read the books, and I think you did, didn't you, Sam? I really thought the ending of the movie was really well. I mean, I see why people are really obsessed with the movie. Just the same reason why people love The Hobbit. I mean, there's some really diehard fans of the fantasy, and if I could go back as a kid and rewatch them, I probably I'd still like them as much as I liked them back then. It's not my favorite fantasy probably movie of all time, but I think it is a really iconic movie that we grew up with, and I see why there's such a huge following with it.
Dude, Lord of the Rings for me is like, it's one of those movies I can go, all three of them I can go back and rewatch like once a year at least. Like if I haven't seen it in a little while and it feels fresh, I'll rewatch it. And they're so long, each of them, that you can rewatch them and they do feel fresh because like there's so much content there. It's like something will feel fresh. But yeah, it's like definitely from seeing it as a kid, and I think if it weren't for Lord of the Rings, I don't know if Game of Thrones would be as successful as it is.
Right.
Probably not.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was huge for the fantasy type movies because
I feel like Lord of the Rings is one of the reasons why Harry Potter is so successful as well as a fantasy movie.
Well, right. It brought fantasy more into the mainstream. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure you can cherry pick examples in pop culture prior to Lord of the Rings that were fantasy. But as far as impact goes, it's like, yeah. I mean, what other fantasy had as big of an impact as Lord of the Rings on modern, pop culture, like fantasy stuff?
Yeah, what I like about it, why I prefer it over The Hobbit is it's more dark and like serious.
Yeah,
The Hobbit, you could tell they try and keep it lighthearted. Even sometimes it gets dark, but
well, just a disclaimer: those Hobbit movies were shit. They didn't need to be 3 parts. Like
Yeah.
they blew up that book. That could have been easily fit into 2 parts and been fine. But they butchered the
I think
Hobbit
they did
movies.
that just because it's just like what you said. With
They were
Lord of the
selling a
Rings.
product.
Yeah, they're selling a product, and there's such a huge following with Lord of the Rings. They knew they.
Well,
would
no,
get
Lord of the
people
Rings were 3 books, 1 movie per book.
Yeah.
Hobbit, they were trying to sell movie tickets and make money.
I did like the cast in this movie too. I mean, I'm not a huge like Orlando Bloom fan, but I think he was really good in the movie. I think Sean Astin was good, and
Oh, what's her name? Dude, Kate Blanchett. I know she only has a minor role, but dude, just like what a gem. And then Liv Tyler.
Galadriel.
I know that
Tyler.
the acting with the elves was a little weird. But,
I think it's because it's probably the language. Like they're trying to like.
they're right. They were just
speak
trying to make a
Elvish.
point, right, out of,
Still make it sound good.
right. And then shout out to Agent Smith as her dad.
right.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I loved it, man. Like even like just the smaller bits where like they go to the mines of Moria or the what's the name of that thing?
The Balrog?
Yeah, the Balrog.
Yeah.
All right.
After all the goblins. Well, the first time I watched it, I thought those were orcs. After rewatching it in like high def, you can clearly tell they're goblins. And I don't know why I thought they were orcs, but it makes sense that goblins would be in there.
Oh, man. Would I kill for, like, a movie just on the backstory of Moria?
I thought I thought the same. I thought they were going to do something like
Real
that.
quick, at the beginning of Lord of the Rings and the beginning of The Hobbit, that's what I really like about those movies is they do like a quick little backstory.
Yeah.
And it's so cool seeing like all the set pieces like before they were destroyed and like seeing all the big names that they reference, but you don't get to see throughout the movie.
Before
like the Dwarf King or whatever.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I actually read something online after Fantastic Beasts, where they came from, pretty much the Harry Potter, like backstory of where the creatures came from. Like people were like an uproar from Lord of the Rings wanting the same thing, like you're just talking about, Sam. Like they were really wanting a backstory of all the stuff, like where all these creatures and all this shit came from. I thought that would have been an awesome idea for the movie. It's just I don't know if they're actually going to go through with it.
You put that to any fantasy world. I mean, just being a fantasy nerd, it's just like we always want more. It's just like when you get like whether it be Star Wars or whatever, it's just like I want expansion on that universe because I love that universe, and I want to see B and C plots of stuff happening that isn't necessarily like the hero's journey. Like I
agree. Yeah.
So.
I think that's what's good about games is. You get the main plot, but there's also side stuff that like fleshes out the entire story. And not that we're talking about games specifically right now, but with something like Lord of the Rings or like a fantasy adventure, it's like you have your main quest, but you can fuck off to a side village and collect chickens for somebody,
right?
Whatever.
All right, so I think that was pretty much sums up Lord of the Rings. Definitely iconic movie from that time and era of fantasy. So the next pick we're going to go into, this is our TV show, I guess our top pick from when we were kids. Not maybe my favorite one, but actually this probably is my favorite one. I'm going to go with mine is South Park. I don't even know where to start with this. I could talk about South Park for literally hours because it's probably my favorite TV show of all time. literally when I watched the first episode when I was a kid, I was probably 11 or 12 years old. I fell in love with it the moment I watched it. I thought the content was hilarious. I thought the whole idea of 4 kids going to school and just being shitheads and just being like totally just raunchy was just amazing. I think it was the first time ever anybody's ever seen a TV show like this, so the kind of people were like kind of blown away by it, because it wasn't like Beavis and Butthead, and it wasn't like Ren and Stimpy or one of those shows.
It was a step above.
Yeah.
As far as the ranch and pushing the limit.
I couldn't even watch it. My parents wouldn't let me watch it.
Yeah.
When it first came out.
Well, I watched it.
and-
I remember watching it over at my grandma's on all the places on Christmas Eve. It came out, the Christmas episode, which was I can't remember the actual
Mr.
first
Hanky.
Yeah, Mr. Or no, actually, I think it was Santa Claus versus Jesus. It was the fight one. It was the first episode or whatever. And I watched it, and my cousins were watching.
Yeah, wasn't that the pilot?
Yeah, it was the pilot. And I was watching, and I was like, what is this? And I literally, my face hurt from laughing. My mom's like, what are you watching? And luckily, my mom and dad were cool, and they didn't care about that kind of stuff. So as soon as they started rolling out, I mean, I literally every week would set my schedule, make sure I could watch this. This is back before we had VHS. There was no recording of this kind of stuff. I mean, you could probably record stuff, but I never did. I remember going to Blockbuster when they first had the VHSs released. I would buy every season because I was so crazy obsessed. I would save my money to buy this so I could watch it at home and obsessively over and over again.
Yeah, I see your VHSs.
Yeah, I still have the VHS in my room, actually. But yeah, literally, till this day, I think South Park's one of those TV shows that literally set new shows for, like, even Cartoon Network, where they have, like, what's that show at a certain time? They have all the...
Adult Swim.
Adult Swim, yeah. I think that's where it set the premises of new TV shows coming out like that. And literally, I don't know if people know this, but South Park literally saved Comedy Central. Like, Comedy Central was going out of business. They picked up South Park, and because of South Park, that's why Comedy Central is even around today.
And don't people argue? Wouldn't people argue, too? It's just like, that also helped Jon Stewart early on.
It did. Because he was right after South Park, so people would continue to watch him afterwards. So...
don't tell him that, though.
Yeah, right. But
his ego would blow up.
I think my favorite thing still about South Park is I like how they make fun of everybody. They don't just stick to one thing. Like, I think at the beginning of a lot of their episodes, they would just, at the time, whoever they hated the most or they wanted to make fun of, they would just make fun of them. And then in the later seasons, they kind of like, I'm going to make fun of whatever's in current topics in the United States, which I think was a really cool, different spin they put on it. The funny thing about it is they never grow up. They're always like in 4th and 5th grade or middle school, wherever they're at the time. They never leave school. But I love all the characters. I like their video games. I mean, I don't know what to say. I love South Park, so I'll let you guys talk and I'll shut up about it.
Yeah, I remember trying to watch it when it first came out. It was either season 1 or season 2. It might have been season 1, like right at the hype, like when it first came out. And I remember watching it, and then like my mom came in or something, and she's like, "What are you watching?" And of course, like the first thing she sees is Kenny get ripped apart by rats. And there's
Was it the Halloween episode?
I don't remember. I just remember him getting ripped up by rats, and then they were cussing, and yeah, I just couldn't watch it. But coming back to it when I was able to watch it, still even back then, it's probably like season 3 or 4. Is like, it's definitely character driven. I mean, the character Cartman, like they have great characters.
Yep.
The guidance counselor,
Mr. Maggie.
Yeah. The cop. I can't remember all their names right now.
Officer Bar Brady. I know all their names and stuff, but yeah, I mean, literally, because of this show, I literally have like inside jokes, not just you guys, but my sister and stuff like that. Like literally, like we make crack jokes at like family functions and say stuff like this, and nobody gets it besides us, and it's from South Park. So it's literally, I've made a lot of friends actually just being a South Park fan in school. There's a lot of kids that were into it, which I got like I guess more into it with them. I actually hung out with these kids just because they liked watching South Park, which was funny at the time.
I love seeing the behind the scenes stuff where they show like them doing the voice acting, and
I do too.
Like how they're coming up with the ideas and stuff. It's fascinating because nowadays they make the show within a week.
Yeah.
Each episode within a week, and it's pretty amazing. I love how they're always current too, always talking about what's going on.
Yep. There's a lot of people. Go ahead, Sam. I knew you were going to say something.
Oh no, Randy, keep going. I was just gonna say I loved seeing the evolution of it over the years, and how you go back and watch season 1, 2, like how rough around the edges it
Oh,
was.
dude, they were using like
paper,
those little paper
Right.
like cardboard cutouts and, stuff.
You know, because I mean, look, at this point, I would argue that why is The Simpsons still in the air? But it's just like I am gonna miss South Park when they stop, because I've been following it since as long as I can remember, and it's just like if there's any show deserving of like, you know, continued syndication, it's a cartoon. It's South Park over Family Guy over Simpsons. In my opinion,
there wouldn't be no Family Guy if it wasn't for South Park. To be honest,
you know, and yeah, man, I don't know. It's just like, yeah, it's one of my favorite. I mean, I love it. I've seen it, you know, all the seasons so many times, but yeah, man, where they took it and just like how Trey just has gotten better. Like you can tell how he's evolved at writing.
Yeah, Matt Stone, Trey Parker, iconic.
But I mean, yeah, when we were younger, those early episodes, it was just like, thankfully I had mom didn't give a shit that I could watch it.
Yep.
It was just hilarious. Yeah, the same thing you were saying, Reenie. It was just like how hilarious it was. And I know it was just like mainly like, you know, like shit and fart jokes, you know, early on, that
right.
kind of like, you know, like potty humor. But at the age I was, it was just like right up my alley. And I just remember like, yeah, like laughing until like I was out of breath, and then like, you know, like gasping for air. It was just like so funny, and I was just like laughing so hysterically.
The voice acting is so hilarious. How they record it and then like increase the pitch.
Well, my favorite part about it, I didn't know for a long time when I was a kid, was Matt Stone, Trey Parker. They do all the voices beside Isaac Hayes when he was chef, and then he like got, you know, he quit because they made fun of his religion and he couldn't deal with it. So, you know, because he was in Scientology, so he pretty much quit after that show.
Well, I wonder how much pressure he got from the church to leave after that.
You know, they didn't really go into detail, but that was the whole reason behind it. So like they used voiceovers for a while, like just of like his voice to like before they killed off Chef.
Goodbye.
Yeah. But overall, like literally, this is probably my top favorite TV show of growing up, and still to this day, like my wife didn't even like South Park, didn't even know what it was. And now she watches it all the time, and I think it's one of her favorite TV shows. Like she literally, I'll be in the other room gaming or doing something, and I'll hear South Park on, and she's watching, laughing in her room.
Well, I'll tell you this: it's like, look, if they would have kept with the same styles those first early seasons, I mean, I don't think they would have made it, you know, very far. So it's like, luckily for them, Trey was so talented that, like, you know, it did, like, he evolved it into something fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
To this day, I love it.
I agree. Before I wrap it up, I'm going to say, like, there's a lot of people who are not, I think, they say they're true South Park diehard fans, but I don't think they appreciate where it evolved from, where they went from, where they just made random episodes to going to an actual, like, storyline thing, and then they based the storyline off now, and then they
carry a story through the season and stuff, and I know that
there's a lot of people upset.
people.
There's a lot of upset people, and people uproaring about it, but
like,
I think
off.
They needed to do something different, and I think that was the right idea of what they did. So
I think it was. It's just Trey trying something new with it. You know, it's like give Ford that guy all the space in the world to do whatever he wants with it.
Well, even as a creator, like I'm sure he's getting bored of doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
You know? It's like he probably wants to do something new.
I mean,
that's why they did the
Simpsons did it.
Or that Mormon musical. What was that called?
Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Which didn't that win Tonys?
Yeah.
16 Tony Awards in one.
Right.
There was somebody recorded it. It was on YouTube. I watched it.
I did
it was
too.
like really shitty quality, but you could hear what was going on.
It's funny that as soon as I came out, one of those words, it was sold out for like 3 or 4 years straight in New York. You couldn't even get a ticket.
Well, I'm pretty sure even when it travels, it sells out. Like the next time, I'm sure the next showing here in St. Louis, it's going to be sold out already.
Last time I looked at dates in New York, it was sold out like all the way through this year, like later through this year or something like that. Last time I looked at it.
Yeah.
It was like it had like a 7th or 8th month run or something, and they were all sold out.
It's crazy. I mean, you can probably find tickets, but they're probably astronomical expensive to get to them.
But let's be honest here. I'd rather go see Hamilton
for $1,500.
I just finished the season of Curb finally. And at the end of the season, Larry tries to write a musical for the Fatwa thing.
That's good. I saw that.
Did you see that?
I saw some of those later episodes. Yeah. They're running to get to the chair.
Pushes him down. Yeah. It's funny because he's like having a conversation with Lynn's wife after, and she's like, "What's wrong with your arm?" He's like, "I was wrestling with Lynn Miranda." He's like, "He threw me down in his office." And she's looking at him like, what? And to him, it was like no big deal. It's just like an everyday thing. Like
You're right.
just wrestling with somebody for a chair.
His show's awesome. I love that show. I don't think I've ever would have watched it if it wasn't for you guys telling me about it. Now that's on, it's every time a new episode comes on. I can't wait.
Larry David's my spirit animal.
Dude, Larry David was Seinfeld, man.
Yeah. He was. He really was. All right, so I'm going to wrap up South Park and move on to Brandon's next pitch, which is Conker's...
No.
Yes, Conker's Bad Fur Day.
We're talking about shows.
Oh, we're talking about shows. I'm sorry. Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, as far as nostalgic shows, I remember watching that after school and, following the storyline after school and just falling in love with it. Like, I was talking to you guys recently or earlier about how I tried to go back and rewatch it. And it's so hard just because of all the build up time, the commercial time. And it's so funny rewatching stuff as older, like as an adult, rewatching stuff you watched as a kid, because the amount of exposition, that they just say and just make it so, like, they'll show you something and then they'll give you like 3 sentences to explain what just happened and what's happening. It's like they try and pound it into your little dumb brain, like, here's what's happening.
Right.
And Dragon Ball Z was very bad at that. They'd go on for like 15 minutes explaining what you just saw, and I was like, okay, get on with it.
Even though it took that long, I was always glued to watching it.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't care. But as you're saying, as you got older and watching, like, how did I sit here for 20 minutes to wait them watch them battle up and talk about, I'm going to fight you in 20 minutes and the episode was over.
Well, luckily they did bring it back every day, because you just pick up where you left off, get off school, go check it out. And
I can actually relate to that because I literally would run home every day to watch it, and I couldn't wait to watch the next episode. And Dragon Ball Z was literally probably my favorite, if not my only anime show I really enjoyed watching. I've tried watching other anime shows, and I just can't watch them.
There's a select
That's
few.
surprising.
Why?
I was gonna say there's a select few animes I can watch, and DBZ is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
But
Is it like a like subtitles thing? You're just not big in. I know a lot of people are turned off by subtitles, which
That's
you
not
miss
for
out
me.
on a lot of good stuff.
I don't think it's that. I think it's because as I've got older, I think, not saying that I'm like biased toward it at all, but it's really hard to watch TV shows that I think are more guided towards kids. Like, I feel like they're more like a kid-friendly type TV show or like anime show.
Well, anime, that's a broad stroke, I'd say, for anime, because it's like there are plenty of like adult-oriented anime that
And maybe
are
I just
very
haven't watched
good.
those.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest anime watcher. I can only speak to really Berserk.
Yeah,
Which I fucking
that's
love.
one of the select few that I do like.
Right.
And the anime, for me, I hate lumping them all into one category, but like
It's anime.
I know it's anime, and the whole culture around, like, the people that watch it, like the neckbeards, that the weeb,
The
shit.
waifu
Yeah.
pillows.
Yeah, like that
and-
shit drives me crazy. Like that
Right.
to me is like so. It's disgusting. It's depressing.
Well,
It's fan service.
yeah, it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
I-
everybody gets that type of like
an anime
depiction of.
seems like anime fans are really big on that stuff.
Yeah. I feel like that it's the same thing where people feel like if you're a person who's a big gamer that you're some nerd. That's,
Yeah, it's being on the outside look.
Yeah,
looking
it's all
in.
it is.
But just back to your point, is it's like you grew up watching Dragon Ball Z. That's why it was just weird to me that it's just like you didn't fall right into more.
Well, to be honest with you, I Dragon Ball Z Super has been out and I've been watching it, which is really like, I was like, man, this is kind of hard to watch, but I still been watching it. I still enjoy it, but it's
Still sticking to your Dragon Ball guns.
yeah, I mean, I still enjoy it. It's still pretty cool, and I'm glad to see that they're still running and making it, and it's still a very popular TV show. I didn't even know that they were making it until some of my friends told me about it, and it's on Cartoon Network, and it's been on. They show it on like Friday and Saturday nights. I just record it and watch it when I can. But to get back to Dragon Ball Z. I do that season was probably my favorite season of any Dragon Ball. I mean, I loved the beginning where they fought when he fought Piccolo into fighting the android, or maybe it was androids after Piccolo. I can't remember exactly the whole storyline, but then I think the Frieza fight was my favorite fight into Majin Buu, and then the Cell, or is it Cell Majin Buu? But regardless. I could rewatch that season all the time. I honestly pull up clips on YouTube sometimes just because I see them online. I want to watch the whole battle fight scenes because the fight scenes were just iconic. I mean, they're my favorite things to watch for fight scenes.
If I were more into the fighting games, there's a couple decent Dragon Ball Z fighting games out now. I think there's one in beta right now. I was watching some guy play it. It's like it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So
I wish they would actually try to make a movie. I saw a fan-based movie on YouTube some guy made of Dragon Ball Z, and it
like
actually
a
looked
live action.
Yeah, live action.
Man, they could make such a good one if they did it right. Like if they
Yeah, let's not forget they did make a live action.
Yeah, it was fucking
Dragon
Dude,
Ball.
it was
movie.
trash. Like it
yeah,
was
I know.
I turned it on and turned it off.
Wasn't it all white people?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get big in onto that, but it's just like, come on, man. There's so many good like Asian American actors. It's like,
What?
really, you needed what's his face? I can't even remember.
I can't remember
the
either. I
main
just
guy.
remember being
but-
like no names.
Yeah, there was
from
no
what I
name
remember.
people. The storyline was shit, and
It had nothing. Had nothing to do with Dragon.
Dude, wasn't
Ball.
Emmy
No.
Rossum in it though?
Was she?
Can we pull this up?
Yeah, we'll pull it up real quick. I just remember watching it, and I remember like the CGI and the stuff with it. I was like, "Is this really for this time and era? This is what they're doing for this movie." I guess it was a low budget movie at the time because nobody was really, into Dragon Ball Z besides like a certain fan base. I really don't know.
I think the problem with the live action Dragon Ball is even if they got somebody to look exactly like the characters, there's no way those people could pull off the voices for those characters.
Well, the funny thing is, the person who actually does the voiceover for like Goku, he still does it for Dragon Ball Super. Like they still have a lot of the same American actors that do it.
I know who you're talking about.
Evolution, Dragon Ball Evolution, right? Yeah,
Is that what it-
2009.
Yeah, there it is. I got it right here. So
Yeah, go to cast.
go to cast, figure this out.
Justin Chatwin.
Justin Chatwin's
Chow
good.
Fat was in it.
Yeah.
Oh, Emmy Rossum was in it. She
You're
was
right.
Bulma.
Yeah.
So yeah, I couldn't even believe they made like after they made this movie. It was funny though. I remember the fans online were bashing the shit out
But
of
I
this
mean,
movie.
look, I don't want to get too deep into it, like I said, but it's seriously like, come on, Justin Chatwin is Goku. Go fuck yourself.
I agree. Like, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Now you get,
Yeah, I
right?
get
It's
it
like,
now.
yeah, because that's what I think of when I think of Goku.
That's crazy. But yeah,
somebody named Justin.
Yeah. Yeah. So overall, I see. I
It's
couldn't.
just a nostalgia for me. Is a nostalgia pick where it's
It
like,
is.
I don't go out of my way to rewatch it, but I'll see like a clip or something, or like I said, I'll see that DBZ game on Twitch, and
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
It's funny. I have like when I have meetings in my office and here in my room, you wouldn't believe how many people when I'm on video are like, "Are those Dragon Ball Z posters you have on your wall back there?" Like, that's awesome. Like, guys are like in their 30s or 40s, like, those are awesome. Which is funny that they're 30 or 40 and around my age, and they still are like, "Yeah, this is great." Yeah, I just think that's funny.
I never watched Dragon Ball Z. I watched Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. Which Pokemon was a huge show around that time too. So I watched Pokemon too. I think I was just more.
I remember coming home and watching Pokemon.
Yeah, I watched the first
yeah.
couple seasons of it.
I remember Saturday morning DBZ actually had movies out back then too, and they would play the movies
Yep.
on Saturday mornings. I
Channel
remember,
11 or was it Channel 30? Or I can't remember.
I think it was Cartoon Network.
Oh, was it?
So, but I remember specifically watching. Was it Garlic Jr.?
Oh, that's right, Garlic Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets all big. And,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I remember watching that movie and like Saturday morning, and it was cool because it wasn't like the season storyline where it's like you have to watch, 30 episodes over the course of a month or two to watch it. It was just one movie, and it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, before I wrap it up, I wanted to say it was funny. Like, when I was a kid and I used to come home and watch the movie, I think I told you guys this earlier, was I used to get so much shit from my friends. Like, they'd come over and be like, "What the hell are you watching?" I'd be watching Dragon Ball Z. And then, like, I had one friend who was actually really into it and watched it with me. Come to find out later in that year down the road, they ended up started watching it with me. Like, the show's really good.
I think DBZ is probably a guilty pleasure for some people. It's one of those things that people like don't want to admit that they like.
Yeah.
Like even back then, I'm sure like when I was watching it, I probably didn't like talk about it all the time with people I was hanging out with at the time.
Right.
But that, like in retrospect, it's like who gives a shit.
All right, so we're going to wrap up Dragon Ball Z. I think it was definitely one of those TV shows I think most kids watched, if not all kids, when around our time and era. But I'm going to move on to Sam's pick, which was Rocko's Modern Life, and which I remember was on Nickelodeon. And I'll just let you can take it off from here, Sam.
Yeah,
about
can I
this.
take it, Randy?
Yeah.
Can I? No, I'm just being a shithead. But yeah, I mean Nickelodeon cartoons. I mean, when you just say the word nostalgia, I think of Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
And
I do too.
I mean, I could have picked, Doug any cartoons from that era, honestly. But Rocko's Modern Life just always stood out as like, just from the intro like to what it was like. There was nothing else like that. And the what do they call it? Where it's kids don't pick up on it, but like the double entendre or whatever, where it's just like it plays like as a child's joke, but it also doubles as like a dirty joke for adults. It was like, because like even you could be an adult and watch it and enjoy it just as much as a kid, but you're getting two different things out of it. But being a kid and watching it, it was just like, I loved how vibrant it was, and those storylines, dude, were so crazy. Like Garbage Day, Very Dangerous Day.
I loved the animation.
And the animation, it was
so
fantastic. Good. And the characters, dude, like, you had Heifer, who was adopted by wolves.
He was a steer.
He was a steer. Yeah, he was a steer, and he was adopted by wolves. And
who else did you have? You had his
Filbert.
Filbert
You
was
turn
a turtle.
the page, you wash your hands. Turn the page, wash your hands.
He was kind of like a germaphobe, if I remember correctly, from when I watched it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and then
kind of crazy for TV.
Do you remember? Do you guys remember the superhero? What was his name? Was it really, really Big Man?
Was it? I can't remember.
I just remember he had the nipples of truth, where he'd shoot his nipples out and they'd plug into people's eye sockets.
I do remember that. Like they were purple or something.
Yeah. This was a children's cartoon in the 90s. But,
it's kind of crazy. If we had cartoons like that nowadays, people would be in an uproar, like they'd be like grossed or offended or something. Some kid was watching it on Nickelodeon nowadays.
The closest, honestly, in my opinion, the closest things nowadays to like that kind of humor would be probably like Adventure Time or Uncle Grandpa or stuff like that. And I don't really watch Adventure Time. I have seen Uncle Grandpa, but it just still is not the same as. But yeah, could they make this again? I know they're remaking it, and I'm curious to see what the remake's going to be like. Yeah. But like, could they, nowadays make the same show they made then now, like for children? I don't think so, because I wonder if this remake is going to be adult oriented, like the Ren and Stimpy was.
I think it is a nostalgic thing where they're bringing it back for the people that watched it back then.
Right. So it's not aimed at children. It won't be aimed at children.
It was funny around Christmas time when me and Sam actually went to the mall, which is funny because I don't know who goes to the mall anymore, but we went to Spencer's, and literally they had a wall dedicated to Rocko's Modern Life. I'm like, why the hell is there a wall of Rocko's Modern Life?
There was a lot of Rocko's Modern Life stuff, and I think there's like a comeback with like the Nickelodeon stuff right now,
like from our time era, like Hey Arnold, that kind of stuff.
Hey Arnold, yeah.
Rugrats.
Dude,
Real Monsters.
I remember
Real Monsters.
That was good.
Shit, that was
fantastic.
I remember
literally watching Rugrats every day, getting home from school. All these TV shows. Doug was one of my favorite ones as well.
They all had, and think of this, they all had great intro music. Yeah, seriously,
they really did.
And like Doug, especially like the beats, like all that shit that they played, I actually used to like it. Like, I wouldn't listen to it, but it's like, what I'm saying, like Killer Tofu.
Yeah. But going back to Rocko's Modern Life, I remember watching this TV show a lot, and I didn't understand a lot of stuff that was going on just because I was probably young when I watched it, right? Like, you're a kid, you enjoy the show, but you really don't know what's going on type of deal. Like, you're just entertained by it. And when you got older and watch it, I still would say, like what you said earlier, Sam, was it was, I guess, driven more towards kid, but it actually had some adult type jokes and stuff that you wouldn't really get as a kid when you're in there, which is kind of funny. And I feel like a lot of shows back, probably on Nickelodeon at the time, probably did have that type of humor. Probably this one the most, but I remember watching it all the time. And I think, Rocko was a wallaby, and I don't remember like. I remember like there's a vacuum episode like they're doing stuff. I don't remember the whole
Suck-O-Matic.
Yeah, the Suck-O-Matic. I remember every episode. I don't remember a lot of stuff from that era of watching it, but I do remember I watched it a lot in my childhood.
Right. It's like, you might not remember like the actual storylines, but there like Rocko's, there were so many things that stuck out. Like, yeah, like the Suck-O-Matic or Really, Really Big Man, or just the weird out there shit.
I remember the supermarket. They'd always go to the supermarket, and the parking lot was like gigantic.
Yeah.
The
like
shopping cart.
No, there was that episode where it was a 99% off sale, and so everybody was going crazy, but it was only due to a certain time. So like he is taking his time. He realized time's almost up, and so like he's got to rush to get to the line, and that too, because if you think about it, modern life, like he was like, it was like the riders were going for, like, you can tell their pet peeves, like shopping, like, and stuff like that, and like
neighbors, annoying
neighbors, and like, so yeah, man, it was just such a great show. It really was.
I'll be excited. I didn't know they were bringing it back. I'm excited to kind of actually watch it and see. I hope they have some of the same actors that did the voiceovers. I don't know.
I think they do.
I don't know. It seemed like Rocko was voiced by the same person. He sounded the same. I don't know if Heifer was, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have anything more to follow up on Rocko's Modern Life.
But no, Nickelodeon at that time in general, I mean, I could go back and rewatch any of those shows, honestly, that I grew up with on Nickelodeon. I mean, they're always going to be timeless classics to me.
If you I haven't watched any of the Nickelodeon shows that are on now, but I've just, like, if you look at them, like the Dora Explorers or that stuff now, it seems so, like, dumbed down. And
it is.
So, like, super, like, kid friendly, and
like, before we wrap up the subject,
we were spoiled with those shows.
We were,
yeah.
I feel like we had an era of like a mini Saturday Night Live for kids with all that with all the cast, because a lot of those kids grew up.
You had Snick.
You had Snick, yeah. And
what was that other show?
Keenan and Kel
variety show. Where they had like action figures. Remember one would always get flushed down the toilet?
Right.
There was like a...
Stinky Diver.
Yeah, Stinky Diver, yeah.
What was that show? What was that called?
Oh, man. I completely forgot about that.
That's going to bother me now.
Right.
I remember they had like the buff woman or the buff girl.
Because that was only... Right, that was only one skit. And then there was...
was that part of all that? Or was it its own show?
I think
was it Action League Now? I think that's the skit
that's
you're
it.
talking
Action League
about.
Now. That's what.
But what was the bigger show it was on? Kablam.
Kablam. That's what it was.
Yeah, because there was the two kids watching TV.
I totally forgot about that show.
I remember. Yeah, okay. I remember one episode where I think the girl like didn't shower. She like didn't want to shower, and she like ended up getting like growing flowers on her and shit. Yeah, I think I remember Kablam.
Yeah, that was definitely iconic in our TV. I mean, Nickelodeon just general. I think we were, like you said, Brandon, we were very spoiled. So, we could probably bring that up in a later podcast too. Talk about like just like Nickelodeon shows in general.
I really could talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap up Rocko's Modern Life, and I'm gonna move on to our last topic, which is games. I'm gonna go into mine, which is The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. This is the Super NES game, and I chose this because this is probably my favorite RPG game of all time. Pretty much every Zelda game is, and this is the game that I first played before. I didn't even play the one on Nintendo. This is the first one I actually played. And just the whole the game over from like the top up view and just the whole storyline of like going to like fight in the dungeons and collecting like the emeralds and the loot and the gear and stuff you get. It was just one of those games that I got sucked into because there was so much to do, and it was fun when I remember as a kid thinking and trying to figure the stuff out, and I felt like rewarded when I would figure things out and to do it by myself. Like when I played this game, most of my friends didn't play it. Like I was home alone usually after after school playing this game, and I remember the first time after I beat it, I literally reset the game and I started over and I played it again because I was so happy that I beat it by myself and I wanted to do it again. So that's the reason I chose this. I mean, it's my favorite RPG. I think Zelda is one of those iconic games that there are a lot of people who are really into it and they could probably speak to this. Like I was talking about earlier on Twitch, they have a lot of speed runs of this game a lot, and they do like the randomizer games where they just put loot and stuff over everywhere and they kind of race to figure out who can finish it first. I watch it still to this day. Like I have an emulator on my PC and I play it at work sometimes when I'm bored on lunch. I'll let you guys speak a little bit more to it. I don't know if you guys actually got to play this game as a kid, but I literally could play this game all the time. Like it's probably one of my favorites Zelda of all time. Maybe I don't know. The 64 one was really good as well, the Ocarina of Time, but this is probably up there with it because it was the first game I ever beat of Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game, this is the game that had like brought out the winning formula that Zelda still uses today, where it's like, go collect these 3 things, turn it in, start your main adventure, go collect these 7 things.
Right.
Oh, you have hearts, you have key items, and it's still a winning formula today. I never played Link to the Past at the time. I've gone back and played it. I've never finished it. I've played similar games like Link Between Worlds. I finished that. But yeah, I mean Zelda in general. There's really good games, good RPGs. You know, a good mix between fighting, action, and puzzles. Which I really love. That's what I love about the Zelda series is the dungeons.
I do too.
Just getting in there.
That and the side
quests.
quests.
And the bosses and yeah.
I love Zelda. I mean, how I just love the worlds. Like, I mean, obviously, fantasy fan, RPG fan. It's like, you know, they go hand in hand. And it's like, this is one of those games. Now, I can't speak to Link to the Past specifically, but Zelda as a whole, it's just like, dude, I mean, just cruising through the worlds. You know, like I think I played Link's Awakening to completion, and it's like I just love the difference. Like, you know, you start off in the foresty area, and you always end up like, you know, by then the beach and then the desert. You know, just like different areas. And then yeah, I mean, it's the whole package there. You literally just said it. You have the puzzles. You know, you have the fighting. You have the gear accumulation. Mm-hmm. I mean, for being back then, like something like that, you know, because I mean, think of other games around the time, you know, like Contra or something, or like where like, you know, weapons were throwaways, or you know, it would get expended. It was just like the idea of like keeping like, you know, an inventory of things that you can switch in and out of, and not only that, it's like you would need certain things for certain puzzles. Yep. It's like, right. God damn, did they do it right? And it's just like, and yeah, the winning formula that they carried on through the rest of their games. And it's just
even Breath of the Wild,
solid series. It's got, I mean, it's a solid story. Like everyone, you know, I think they do mix up the stories a little bit per game, mm-hmm. but it's like at the end of the day, like there's the standalone stories. Because isn't that the deal with Zelda? It's just like more or less, it's just like there'll be different things going on, but I mean, it's always Link, and there's always Princess Zelda and Ganon.
Well, apparently there's an official Zelda timeline where they show, apparently there's different versions of Link based on the choices that you make in previous games.
Yeah, so there is.
I forgot the branching one where it all branches from, but then like I think A Link to a Past or Ocarina of Time, one of those games, the games that come out after it are on different timelines based on decisions that were made in Ocarina of Time.
Oh, way.
In the official timeline. Yeah. So even if you do something specifically in Ocarina of Time and then you still play the other games, but they're saying, you know, if the hero died in Ocarina of Time, then it goes to this timeline. If you defeat Ganon in Ocarina of Time, then it goes to this timeline. Something like that.
That just adds another layer that I never knew of.
It makes the backstory
awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I know that. Because look, you know, it's always been time travel has played a part with these games. I mean, obviously, Ocarina of Time being the one that comes to mind mainly, mm-hmm. but
in Breath of the Wild, you know how the.
And Breath of the Wild, he's stuck in, right? And it's just like, man. I mean,
my favorite thing about it was, just like you guys said, like it's just the storyline and how much gameplay there was of the actual game and the side quests. Like, it's funny that a lot of people don't even know this, but last year to this day, like some guy actually found a secret in this game, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, that's been there since the origin of the beginning of the game that no one even knew was there. Like the creator put it in there, and some guy just stumbled upon it when he was doing a speed run.
Really?
And, yeah, I forget what it was, but it like showed like it was like a little dungeon. It was around like the dungeon area, and like it was around like the back of the castle, and you open up this spot and went down, and it was like it showed like the creators' names or like some other stuff that was in there. It was pretty cool that someone found it, and the game's been out for 20 plus years or something like that, or longer. I really don't remember the actual date of when it came out, like the early 90s, but.
I think a lot of people were taken by this game is because it felt open world. Like for the time,
open world game.
There weren't many games that felt like that. And I think it's similar to how Breath of the Wild finally achieved that feeling of open world, where
true open world.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Ocarina of Time strived for it. You know, every.
But if you go back and look at those maps, it's not. You know, it's just like you got point A, point B.
In loading screens and
right, and you had that Hyrule Field, and it's just like well, how do you want to get to point A? You can go left or right, it's like but at that time though, it did capture that feeling for me that it was just like, oh, I'm running around on a pond and like this is great, but it's like if you look at those maps, it's like it's like
Yeah.
very destination oriented. Whereas like Breath of the Wild, that's true open world.
Right. I think the one thing I liked about it too was they've always stayed true to doing like two halves in their game. Like you have the light world and you have the dark world, and you'd always have to get like a mirror or some type of like sword
like
to
young
actually
Link and adult Link. Or,
yeah, something they've always stayed true
Like
to.
yin and yang.
Yeah, the yin and yang pretty much. And I always appreciated that because I felt like that was one of the big things that made the game more fun, because you're like, oh, I already beat this world. Well, now I got to go to the next world and beat all this other stuff. And I think that's one reason why I like the game so much, because there was just so much stuff to do. And it was one of those games that was just like, oh, I did this and it's throwaway and it's done. Like, it was just done after that, right? So, like, the open world feel was probably my favorite thing about it. I totally forgot to even mention that.
The thing that's great about Zelda series, not just A Link to the Past, is every game is polished. It's like every game, they take their time on it and it comes out and it's just a great game. Like there's no one ever is like giving Zelda a bad review. You know, it might not have like the best reviews, but Ocarina of Time classic, Breath of the Wild instant classic.
Yeah. I think that's why they took so long to delay Breath of the Wild, because they were so worried about the content, gameplay, and the backlash if they didn't have it perfect, that people are going to be upset.
Honestly, I don't think it's perfect. It got like nearly perfect reviews, but for me, there's room for improvement. Like I think the dungeons could have been better.
I think so too. I think that was one thing I wanted more, is dungeon stuff, and
I think they try to supplement that with the shrines. But
yeah, the shrines was kind of the new
didn't
feel.
really do it for me.
I'm not going to go down that hole since it's it's not Link to the Past, but
Yeah.
I got a 10-minute spiel on that whole topic.
Yeah.
So all right, well, I'll wrap this up, and that was probably my most favorite game of Zelda of that time. So I'll move on to the next game pick, which was Conker's Bad Fur Day on 64. I remember playing this game when I was a kid as well, but I'll let Brandon. I'll let you talk about this, Brandon, since it was your pick.
Yeah, it was just for nostalgia purposes. I remember playing the shit out of that game, like single player. It was just a funny game, and it was just a fun game. It was an IP that had never been heard of. It was a brand new IP, but it had the what was that company? They did like all the Nintendo games.
Rare,
yeah.
It had that polish to it, that rare polish, whereas like it felt like the Donkey Kong 64 or Super Mario or whatever. Like
it definitely did have that
Goldeneye,
feel.
Perfect Dark. It was just a good game. I remember the story being great and like just funny characters, funny boss characters. Like I remember there was the big shit.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you had to throw the toilet paper in
yeah.
his mouth to clog him up and stuff, and
then it got to like darker storylines where you're like on the beach. It was like that beach scene from that movie.
Saving Private Ryan.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, a lot of people don't.
It had a lot of movie references. There was that Matrix scene where you go to the bank.
I forgot
Never
about
did that
that.
too.
Yeah.
I remember the game came out, and it was one of those games where like most people are like, "What the hell is this game?" But then when you played it, it didn't really have that Donkey Kong type feel game.
Yeah, that 3D adventure.
Yeah, the 3D
like,
adventure.
collect stuff.
Platform.
I remember one thing that always stuck out to me
Dare I?
was like when you first started the game, if you pressed a certain button, he would drink Alka-Seltzer because he was hungover and he was trying to like I forgot it, like he went out partying that night, and I forget the whole like backline story of it, but it's funny that a game like that could have had that type of raunchiness as a kid.
Dude,
without
they say the word fellatio in that game.
Yeah.
I remember like not knowing what that word meant.
Me either.
But like getting in trouble for repeating it. And yeah, dude, he would like piss on things.
What
you piss on things.
was I forgot? Was that like a level specific? Like you're like pissing and putting out fires or something?
Yeah, each level you had certain like
Something
abilities
like that.
you could use, like certain ones you could use like his shotgun and like throwing knives and like the pissing, and then
I forgot how the mechanic worked.
Yeah.
And the other thing I remember about that game is I played it a lot with like my brother and I think TJ and somebody else, but I remember the multiplayer being really good.
I was gonna chime.
Oh,
That's
I
what I
totally
wanted
forgot
to
about the
chime
multiplayer.
in on that. I had so much fun with that
I probably spent more
multiplayer.
time in multiplayer than single player in that game.
It was fantastic multiplayer.
Yeah, I remember playing multiplayer with friends, and we would always be laughing and stuff. Actually, having more fun because of the weird shit you could do, and not just thinking about like
the teddy bear, the killer teddy bear.
Yeah, the killer teddy
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was a good game.
I really liked the game. I never owned the game, but one of my friends owned it at the time. I think his name was Tony Matta at the time when I used to hang out with him in my neighborhood, and he actually had the game, and we played it once in a blue moon because we'd always play Goldeneye over the game probably, or Donkey Kong 64. But when we did play it, it was one of those games we'd sit down for hours and play it and laugh our ass off.
I remember a sequel came out for I think Xbox 360. I never played it, but I don't remember it getting like crazy good reviews, so I was like, whatever. I
Mhm.
just remember the first one just like coming out and being new and just like something. It felt new and the story wasn't bad and it was just fun. It was a good game.
Fun, very fun.
Yeah, it was a fun game. It was, and it wasn't too difficult or hard either, which made it fun. Like the storyline was funny, and like going through like the bosses, they weren't too difficult. I remember like you like for health up, you had to eat like chocolate bars or something that was like be randomly around the world. I had no idea what the hell that had to do with a squirrel. Was he a squirrel?
I think so, something like that.
I think he was a squirrel.
Yeah,
I don't remember now. I
yeah.
don't know what type of animal he is. He kind of looks like he's got like a foxtail, but he doesn't look like a fox in the face.
Yeah, so I mean, I overall I always enjoy playing the game, and I'm glad we even talked about it. I honestly, until you brought it up, I literally even forgot about that game as a 64 game when I played it as a kid.
Well, yeah, I was trying to think of a game that I played that was like not
yeah.
just like a super common. I mean, most people played this, but it's kind of a weird pick.
Yeah, so like I just looked it up. He is a red squirrel, and the storyline looks actually pretty. I remember him going to like
Embarks on a quest simply to return home to his girlfriend,
girlfriend.
after a night of binge drinking with
binge
his
drinking.
friends.
Like when we were kids, who ever thought about
Nice.
a red squirrel binge drinking when you played a video game? Like that's why I was remembering that the Alka-Seltzer part was always funny because I was like, what is that?
The fact that this got approved by Rare, that's
By Nintendo?
right?
The funny thing I can speak about that is like for Nintendo, one thing they do.
Go ahead.
I would say they always make games that are just like. I feel like they're always perfect. Like most games they make, I feel like are always like amazing. But especially back in those days, maybe not as much nowadays. But I feel like they have so many iconic games that stand out over Xbox or PlayStation or anything. Like Nintendo has so many different genres of games that people are just obsessed with.
I think that was some of the appeal for the game for me was that it looked so kid friendly, but it wasn't.
Like a raunchy Banjo Kazooie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of it has kind of like a Banjo Kazooie feel.
That's a good way to put it.
So I think we'll wrap up this one, but yeah, overall this was a really fun game from.
Nice pick
Yeah.
out of left field, honestly.
Yeah,
would say.
I had no idea that literally this was going to be one of your picks, but I'm glad you brought it up because I thought this game was fun when I was a kid. So going into our last game pick is going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, the Super NES game, which is also an arcade game as well, if most people didn't know this at the time, back in the early 90s. And Sam, I know this is one of your games that you picked, so go ahead and let's talk about this one.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about nostalgia and like picking a game, I mean, there's like hundreds of choices.
I know, it's hard.
It's very hard.
But so like I didn't want to get too bogged down, so I was just trying to think of like what bubbled up in my mind, and this was one of a few, and I was just like, you know what, yeah, I want to talk about this because like this one, I just. The way it was, and being a little kid, like, you know, it's just like I would always get, you know, thrashed by foot soldiers, and it's like if I played through this game by myself, if I wasn't playing through my brother, it's like I could never beat it. So I would be sitting there, and I just remember putting hours into the Big Apple, you know, like literally the goddamn first level over and over, and then finally getting to the point of like getting farther in the game, and but yeah, man, it just sticks out. It's nostalgic. It's like I used to play with my brother when we were little, and it was just like it was just so much fun. It's an arcade style game, but
It's one of those games kind of got the Contra feel where it goes from like left to right. There's no like really guns in this one or nothing, but it's got that.
No, and I like Double Dragon.
Double Dragon,
you know?
yeah.
And it's a fighter, but it's like an arcade fighter, and it was like, you know, like I just had so much fun, and it's just like so many just memories of playing with my brother.
Dude, Ninja Turtles, they were like hot shit when we were that age.
Yes, they
Like,
were.
Right.
they were
Okay.
like
Yeah.
the
Think of
TV
that
show,
too.
the movies.
Yeah. The movies.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going to the mall and going to whatever it was, the arcade in the mall. I can't remember the
What
time.
was it called?
Do you remember our name? What was Mid Rivers Mall? It was called that everybody went to. Like you went there and you went to the movies or whatever. You hung out there in the food court.
But I don't
It was
know.
Tilt. That was what it was. Tilt.
Yeah.
So I go in there. I remember there'd always be the Asian like Tekken dorks that'd be sitting around there with like 30 people behind there, like playing a tournament and stuff. Which the game was always cool, but I could never get in line and get into play because there's people that sit there and play for 24 hours a day until it closed. But I always remember Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The arcade game was there, and we could always get there with 4 friends, and we'd sit there and play it for I don't know, an hour or 2 or whatever when we were in the mall just chilling and get some food or whatever. And I always remember I had so much fun playing it. And when it came out on Super NES, like I was so excited. I remember that summer I had my mom buy it for me. And I think it took me the entire summer to beat the game with one of my neighbors. And we only played a 2-player. And it was a fun game. It was one of those games where like I could literally probably to this day probably pick it up and play it again. It probably wouldn't be as hard as it was when I was a kid. But overall, I loved the game. I loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when I was a kid. I loved the TV show. So I could see why this is one of those games that you pick because it's...
Now that you bring it up, now that I think about it at the time, it was like, yeah, I had a bunch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. You know? Like, I was, the
toys were huge.
Yeah, I was a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan. Yeah, those movies, like, watched the shit out of 1 and 2. And then they even had a cartoon series, right?
They had the cartoon series. Yeah. I remember even when I was a kid, I had a rubber mask dressed up for Halloween. Me and my friends did as Ninja Turtles. I think I was like Donatello or something, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they were very iconic when we were kids. And
definitely.
I'm surprised they haven't made a game nowadays for them. Maybe the fan base has really died off.
I don't know. Because did they release a game? Because I know after that reboot.
Yeah, I think they did. I don't remember hearing about it.
But I'm sure, it's not going to have the staying power, obviously, as this did.
Oh, no. And I feel like back when we were in the 90s, those type of games were, I don't know, I feel like the games were made really well back then for Super NES games, like especially for a type of game like the...
There were a couple games like that type. I remember like there was a Batman one specifically and a Spider-Man one.
I remember Spider-Man
you're
one.
like on the street fighting guys coming out from the side of the screen and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was just for Turtles in Time specifically. It seemed like it was just really good.
But yeah, no. Also, I was a big fan of Double Dragon. I forgot I think it was Double Dragon 2. Used to play a bunch with my brother as well, so it was just like a very similar game. So
I'm trying to like compare it to a game nowadays where it's that side scroller like fighting, like you just punch and you're just hitting guys, and I don't know what type of game nowadays would be like that you could compare it to, where you're just like a nonstop. I guess like those Dynasty Warriors maybe.
Yeah,
right. That'd be, and that's a stretch, but it's like I honestly because I mean look, you got to think it was just like this is back during the
that was technology. What technology allowed was let's put guys coming over from the side of the screen.
But like I think like that's like the end of the arcade era, and that's probably why we don't see more,
a lot of games like this anymore.
Because I'm trying to think right now, like what similar play style game nowadays was this?
There isn't too many games like this anymore.
I think it was just
if they polish up some graphics, I would play. I love the mechanics of this. I would play this again.
Talking about this, I feel like we were spoiled because we're in an era where we got to see a lot of game development. Most kids nowadays would even like appreciate kids don't get to go to arcades nowadays. Like there is no arcades nowadays.
Well, there's phone games nowadays, and there's microtransactions nowadays.
Yeah, but phone games aren't the same feel as going into playing with 4 friends in an arcade.
I know, but that's what's big with a lot of younger kids. It's like I look at my nephew, and he fucking loves phone games, and it's like phone games are trash.
I feel like the reason that is the way it is because it's like a free babysitter nowadays for kids. For like parents don't have to have a babysitter that's give them an iPad or a phone and let them play games for hours, which is.
But I mean, it's not even the parents' intention. It's just the kid run. It's like a kid playing. Dude, think about how many Saturdays you wasted as a kid fucking playing video games.
No, I'm not saying that's not what it is, but I think my attention span was different back then. Like, I rather went outside and played instead of coming home and just playing on my phone all day at school or whatever they're doing nowadays.
Well, I think part of it is, I think that's why the Switch is blowing up, is because I mean, you don't really have that many mobile gaming options.
Right.
You know, if you're at the dentist office with your kid and it's like they want to play a game, it's like you give them your phone. And that's why they play phone games. They get used to playing phone games. That's what they know and love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if you had a Switch and you were playing like console games all the time instead of phone games, you know, maybe they wouldn't be interested in phone games. I'm sure kids are keeping the phone game market thriving. I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, the only reason I brought this up is, like, I remember a time when, and Brian could speak to this, and probably you, Sam, when you come over to my house in high school, and my dad had the Asteroids arcade game. Do you know how many people would come over and play that over playing, like, other games? We'd sit in front of there, and we would do whatever for hours, and we would sit there and play the Asteroids game. I don't know if you ever get to come over and play that, but I love doing that, man. Like, I always thought that was, like, one of those throwback things that most people don't get to do nowadays, and I love it. So I feel like kids nowadays don't get to experience it. Kind of like we were talking about earlier, kids will never experience going to Blockbuster and getting the new movie of the week, the new flavor, like the fun, like going there, picking out the movies and doing stuff.
The Blockbuster experience as a kid on a Friday night, nothing better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
new movie, new game.
Yeah.
I mean, kids nowadays they went to Redbox and now we got Netflix and everything else. Everything's about convenience now, but I think it was even better when we were kids because, man, you go up there and you're a kid and you might see like some hot girl from school and you're getting a movie and whatever. And you might, whatever. It was just like a fun thing to do for 30 minutes.
Do you know Blockbuster's actually still huge in Alaska?
Yeah, I saw that. I read an article about that.
There's like
it was the last one standing.
There's a couple towns, there's like a couple there, and it's huge because they don't have it. They have
terrible internet.
It's terrible.
Uh-huh.
So it still makes
that's like
sense.
huge for them.
Yeah, they still get the Blu-rays, DVDs, whatever, and like what they do on Friday, Saturday nights, they go to the Blockbuster, they go to the movies, which I think is cool. I think it's cool. It's cool to see that still around. I don't know if it's actually a franchise out there. If someone just individually owned each Blockbuster, I didn't really read into that. But
well, it's weird how our lifestyles are determined by location. You know, as far as like technology, like. Just because I live somewhere I don't have internet, so I have to live a different way, you know? Like, I still have to go to Blockbuster or, like...
Right.
That's weird.
I thought it was cool. I mean, to this day, I even tell kids that I know they're younger, it's like, you guys missed out on the fun times going and doing this kind of stuff.
I got to harken back to South Park again real quick, the episode where Randy purchases a Blockbuster, and it's, like, haunted...
by the people that used to go there and shop for movies and stuff. Yeah, I mean that's iconic. That was funny how they did that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was hilarious.
And then instead of actually being in there in person, they have an iPad with his face on there, like helping him as the son.
Oh yeah.
So, I don't know if you guys want to talk about anything else. I mean, this is pretty much our podcast.
That's the topics.
So this is pretty much going to wrap up our podcast for the second episode. If you guys enjoyed it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if there's anything you guys would like to see from us,
follow me at Twitter, LinkedIn, all the social media,
MySpace,
at Crapface.
Please leave some comments below what you guys liked, what you didn't like, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
See you.